I'm Ernie Humphrey, Educational Program Leaders for Performative, the largest online community for corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related professionals. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's technology demo webinar, Leveraging Success Through Visibility Achieved with Real-Time KPIs. Being proactive rather than reactive as a finance leader is critical in today's world and requires having the right tools to give you the competitive edge. During our webinar today, we're going to discover how finance leaders are leveraging CompuWare's ChangePoint professional services automation software to drive best-in-class decision-making by having access to the right information at the right time. Laura Oppenheimer, a CompuWare ChangePoint subject matter expert, will demonstrate this powerful BI tool and show us how it empowers real-time financial and operational visibility. I would like to thank CompuWare, whose commitment to thought leadership helps us make this event possible and deliver at no cost. A quick note on today's agenda. First, we will hear a presentation from our featured speaker, Laura Oppenheimer. Then we'll move into the interactive Q&A session. We will spend the remainder of our hour. We would like it to be an interactive experience for you. So if you have any questions at any time, please go to the questions area and go to our control panel and send us your questions. We can't promise to get all them in, but we'll do our best, and we'll follow up afterwards on any questions we did not get to. A few more logistical notes about the webinar. A link to today's presentation and video recording of this webinar will be sent out to all attendees within 24 hours of the event. And please note that the presentation is already posted at www.performative.com/resources for free download. Also note, as the event is a technology demo, it's not eligible for CPE credit. Again, we encourage you to ask questions on today's topic via the questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel at any time during the webinar. Finally, you'll be asked to take a short survey today regarding the webinar. We greatly appreciate your feedback regarding our event today, as we always strive to improve the ROI we offer our event attendees for their valuable time. A quick word about Performative. Performative is the largest online community and resource for senior-level corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related leaders. Performative connects corporate finance leaders to provide instant advice and insights on the tough financial and strategic challenges they face each and every day. Okay, let's get started with today's featured speaker, Laura Oppenheimer, subject matter expert, CompuWare ChangePoint. Ms. Oppenheimer is a subject matter expert responsible for the support and education of field-based resources who sell and implement CompuWare's industry-leading ChangePoint solution. Ms. Oppenheimer has more than 16 years of experience in delivery of enterprise software solutions within multiple industries and organizations worldwide. Her extensive experience spans the project management, resource management, portfolio management, help desk, and financial management disciplines. A frequent speaker at ChangePoint user group and industry conferences, she is a recognized thought leader in the financial management discipline within the PSA field. Ms. Oppenheimer holds a Bachelor's degree of Arts from the University of the South and an MBA from American University. With that, it is my distinct pleasure to hand the floor over to Laura Oppenheimer. Laura, take it away, please.
Okay. Thank you for the introduction, Ernie. Good afternoon, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today as I share some of CompuWare ChangePoint capabilities with you. For those of you who are not familiar with CompuWare ChangePoint, I'd like to first give you a brief overview on how we came to be and where we are now. I promise to keep slides to a minimum, as I know everybody's anxious to see product, but I do think it's worthwhile to sort of level set and provide some background on our product before we get into the technical demo. To give you a bit of historical perspective, ChangePoint was a standalone company, and it was a pioneer in the PSA market going back to the mid-1990s. It was acquired by CompuWare in May of 2004. During that acquisition, CompuWare did leave all of the product-related knowledge intact. We are a business unit within the organization. We still have many of the same developers, support team, and consultants that we had pre-acquisition. So I think that speaks a lot to our experience that has carried on through the years. In terms of our current perspective, we are serving over 400 customers globally with various deployments ranging in size from 100 users to well over 30,000 users. We are a recognized leader in both the professional services automation and the product and portfolio management markets. We were recently named the top installed PSA platform for 2013 by the Technology Services Industry Association. And we have been named a leader in Gartner's Project and Portfolio Management Magic Quadrant since 2005. ChangePoint, it's important to point out that ChangePoint is a longtime leader in the PSA space in helping organizations, particularly technology product service organizations, manage all aspects of the customer lifecycle. So from managing the sales pipeline, booking the business, planning and managing projects, forecasting out resource requirements, assigning and managing your resources to work, tracking the time and expense, invoicing, recognizing revenue, and staying on top of customer issues and collaborating with customers throughout the process. We can do all of this. Our product provides you with the functionality to support your critical processes in all of these areas. It is a highly configurable and single integrated solution, and we have validation from both customers and analysts, as we saw in the previous slide. We have very strong integration capabilities as well as a proven track record, integrating with HR systems, financial systems, various ERP systems, you name it, we've probably done it. We do have an integrated CRM module as well as support desk or help desk. However, we have also integrated to customers' existing CRM and support desk systems. We provide, as we will see today, executive reporting and dashboards, as well as what we call accelerators, which are pre-configured databases that are designed to get customers up and running more quickly, as opposed to starting with a blank database. The accelerators are based on some industry best practices, and you can really pick and choose what pieces you want to use. So workflows, reports, dashboards that are pre-configured. We have a proven implementation methodology and various delivery options for that, but we do really tend to use our own people in implementing our product, and we find that that's been very successful for us. So if you implement ChangePoint, you will get very experienced consultants for your implementation. Also at CompuWare ChangePoint, we work continuously to stay on top of trends and challenges in the PSA market. And we do this through our interaction not only with analysts, but also by talking to prospects during our sales cycles and talking to our customers. And we try to stay ahead of the game to proactively meet customers' needs in the landscape that seems to be ever-changing in the world that is known as technology professional services. And in looking at current trends within the space, our customers are finding that professional services are indeed a strategic differentiator, and they contribute to increased customer satisfaction as well as company revenues. And they're really becoming a bigger player in terms of corporate revenues. However, they're also finding that the traditional services streams are under extreme price and margin pressures. The good news is that even small improvements in services can yield big results in terms of dollars. So whether, this holds true whether we're talking about, improving revenue, margin, utilization, customer satisfaction, or something else. However, the ability to do so, to make these improvements, is always a challenge. Very often we're hindered by limited visibility and access to timely data across the organization, and this very often results in poor resource utilization, money left on the table, and low customer satisfaction, just to name a few of the issues. However, implementing a PSA solution such as ChangePoint with the right KPIs can help any organization overcome these challenges. Okay. ChangePoint allows technology companies to maximize professional services profitability while maintaining its focus on effective product decisions and delivery. Its integrated solution allows product-centric technology companies to drive the services growth with strong margins, to deliver a competitive product and services mix for high ROI, and to maintain top-line revenues and bottom-line profitability. So whether we're talking about defining strategies and roadmaps for your products, or developing your products and services, or deploying your solutions, controlling financials and service level agreements, supporting your customers' needs, or managing growth and profitability, ChangePoint provides control and visibility across all of these critical functions. The control and visibility are delivered via a single integrated solution with robust business analytics. And this gives you the visibility you need into real-time data in order to make effective business decisions. So while we certainly offer visibility into the detail needed for a practitioner who needs to manage the day-to-day activities, we also provide for the summarization or aggregation of this data at the executive level through KPI reporting. ChangePoint KPIs can be historical or forward-looking, and this, combined with the ability to drill down into root cause, provides executives with real-time data necessary to make proactive decisions. So we're not just reacting to something that has been an issue for a while. Okay, in this last slide, we can see the percentage difference in professional services revenue growth and gross margin between organizations using a PSA solution and those that are not. While in a few cases the percentage may seem small or insignificant, it's important to keep in mind that a very small percentage increase in professional services revenue margin can translate into a very large increase in actual monetary amount. As such, in the technical demo, we will focus on some examples of executive level visibility and key performance indicators within the financial area and how ChangePoint provides real-time visibility and drill-down capability into root cause, all from the executive dashboard. So at this point, that concludes the PowerPoint part of the presentation, and I will now go into the technical part of the demo. All right, so now hopefully everyone can see the live product we're sharing. This is a ChangePoint demo system. It's hosted. We have data in this system that represents a fictitious company. Here we're looking at an example of an executive view with various tabs across the bottom here. And our BI tool enables us to create and tailor these types of views that are important to your organization and meaningful to your business. So, you know, what you see here, while it's meaningful, say, to my organization, perhaps your organization would want to look at revenue across different dimensions than what we see here. So again, just please keep in mind that these are just examples of what is possible, but certainly there is much more possible than what we're going to see in this short time today. But the idea is to present your executive with everything that he or she needs to make decisions from this view. So really having access to high-level data like we see here, and then giving them the ability to drill down into root cause all from the dashboard without really having to leave it. That is the intent of our dashboard strategy. So let's start with this first tab that we have open. We're looking at revenue by fiscal year. So note that at the top we've got a filter up here by fiscal year, and this was configured to just include up to 3 fiscal years. I've got it filtered on 2. Again, this is something that you, in your build out of ChangePoint, you could include 20 fiscal years if you wish. But in this case, we're really only wanting to look at last year's results as well as where we are this year. So I've got it filtered on 2012 and 2013. So revenue is always of keen interest, both historical and forecast. In this particular view, these are historical or actual results. in a minute, we will take a look at something that is forecast. And on the left, what we can see over here is that we don't appear to be tracking quite to the same levels of revenue and margin this year, even though we're only mid-year. We're not quite tracking where we were in 2012. It's hard to say at this point if that's something to be concerned about without drilling down into further details as to why. But we can see that we at least have an early warning visual that something is possibly amiss. To the right, we have some additional charts really slicing and dicing our revenue across different dimensions. So looking at this first one, I can see we've got a very big discrepancy across our sales regions in terms of revenue that was generated. Our East region seems to really be doing its lion's share of revenue generation. Same with industry type in terms of our customer base. We seem to be generating a lot of revenue in one particular industry type. And the same holds true for lines of business. So we really are doing a lot of work in the implementation line of business. And then lastly, if we look at this by top customers, we have one really good customer here that's comprising a large amount of our revenue. So we've got a lot of our eggs in one basket at the moment. We probably should look at doing something about that. In the meantime, we need to make sure we keep that customer really happy. But we need to look at getting our business a bit more diversified based on what we see here. Granted, this is a demo system, and the way this data has played out in these views is probably not very realistic, but hopefully it is getting the point across. So from here, after we've had an initial look at how our data is stacking up for revenue, I can launch into another view that takes us in to look at revenue a little bit differently. So we're on this revenue analysis tab. Now, to the right, we're looking at our revenue again by fiscal year. Similar views to the charts on the first tab. Here we have access to a filter that we can toggle, and we can dynamically change the view in this window here. Okay. So here we're looking at it by industry type. If I want to view this by sales region, I simply can come over here and refresh this particular view to view it by region. Okay. To the left, we have an actual forecast report, and this is looking at just sort of a one-year forecast of data by our sales regions. And again, in looking at this in terms of our forecast, the East really has a much larger share of projected revenue than some of the other regions. So this is a great place to have a drill down example. So we can look at some of the underlying details and figure out, well, why is that the case? Do we have one really large customer or one really large engagement that's comprising that? Or do we have a particular account manager that seems to be generating a lot of this revenue? So in this detailed report that I'm showing, we can see that we do have, if we look here at chunk columns for Atlantic Software, there is a particular engagement we have in progress with Atlantic Software that comprises, over half of our total forecast revenue. So, while that is great, it's also a little bit scary that is all riding on one engagement and customer. I can also see that Beth McLean, our account manager up here, she has probably, about close to a third or a little bit more of the total forecast from 3 different engagements that she has on the go. So she's doing pretty well with her named accounts. And so it gives me just a better idea of where those numbers are coming from. What I can also see is that most of these numbers are coming from work that's already booked. We don't seem to have much of a pipeline for the rest of the year, at least as of yet. Okay. Moving on to other financial indicators, let's take a look at profitability by fiscal year. Again, on this page, we have a fiscal year filter where we can dynamically update all of these reports to include or exclude certain fiscal years based on what I wish to view. So let's start with the margin improvement curve up here in the top left. This is a good example of how we can take a industry benchmark or target that we want to track against and incorporate that into a dashboard. So based on our industry and size, we want to be at a margin of 40% or above. So we have built this in as a visual indicator into this particular KPI. So we can very, very clearly see that while we were hitting it in 2012 and 2013, so far we really are not even close, and this is concerning. So again, this is a good opportunity to have details as to why. Then, if we take a look at the chart just below that, we can see what's comprising the cost. You can see how much has been invoiced. We can see our billable cost, our unbillable cost, and the margin. And the thing that I really noticed in this chart is that we've got significantly higher unbillable costs in 2013 as compared to 2012. We barely had any in 2012. So this is a good opportunity to demonstrate an example of a drill down into the root cause. So if I click on this particular bar, we're going to have another report come up, and apologize, there's a little bit of a delay between having a hosted environment and the fact that we're sharing this over webinar. Things go a little bit more slowly. But here we get to a drill down report that shows me what is picking up those numbers for 2013 in that chart. And I can see the various project names, the engagement manager responsible for the project, and then I can see the breakdown of revenue, of billable costs, unbillable costs, and the margin. And this second one right here, I can see right away that we've got a negative margin going, a total cost that's a lot higher than the revenue so far, and we've really got a large amount of unbillable costs, and that just doesn't seem right. So from here, I'm going to drill down one more level and see if I can get a bit more information on where is that unbillable cost coming from on that project. So, is it unbillable labor? Is it unbillable travel expenses, or unbillable products? So in this case, I can see we have $20,000 as an unbillable product, which could mean we had to make some sort of large software or hardware purchase for that particular project. Without providing more details, which, by the way, is possible, but without providing that right here, it's hard to know, but at least I know it's unbillable product cost. The question is, is that something that should be billed, or someone made a mistake in terms of how they entered it? It's hard for me to say, but I could easily provide additional details to drill down into from here, or I could simply say, you know what, I'm going to give Anna a call. This is under her purview. I'm going to ask her to look into it and just make sure something's not horribly amiss and see what we can do to get that back on track. Okay. We have some other views as well into the profitability over fiscal year. We have table format. We can also look at trends by fiscal year in terms of what's been invoiced, the margin, the types of costs. And from here, we can drill down into a bit more detailed analysis on profitability. We won't spend a whole lot of time here on this particular tab, but what we can see here is that we can take that same profitability data, and just like we did with revenue, we can slice and dice this across different dimensions that are meaningful to our organization and how we need the data presented to us to be able to make decisions. So, for example, I can see that if we look at our profitability by lines of business, where we are not hitting our benchmark for margin. Again, we've got color coding over here that highlights when we're, at or above our target benchmark and when we're below it. So where we're not hitting that, we maybe need to look at making some changes. Do we completely retire a line of business? Do we need to look at increasing bill rates? We have some kind of decision we probably need to look at making, and this will give us some information to start digging deeper and looking into it. Additionally, we can see this by the different account managers. We have a couple of account managers that are showing pretty well with the profitability of their accounts. Others are not. So this indicates that we might need to make some decisions or some changes to our account managers if certain resources are not performing. And then over here, looking at this by customer, again, we have some customers where we really seem to have a much more favorable margin. And why is that? From here, we could certainly have the ability to drill down and look at the rates that were presented or negotiated with the customer. Have we severely discounted rates? What have you. So again, really anything you can think of, as long as we're capturing that in change point, it can be bubbled up to the dashboard level, like you see here, and then from the summarized level, provide drill downs into the details as it makes sense to do. Another key indicator of interest to executives is the billable utilization of consultants. Billable utilization, as we know, means money, and the more optimally utilized resources are, the more revenue you can generate. It is an area where a very small improvement can lead to a very significant gain in the revenue. So in this view, we can see how our various groups of resources, what we call work groups in ChangePoint, are performing against their billable targets. Over here to the left, we can modify the time period and view results only for that time period. Right now, we're actually looking at a few years worth. In the chart or the table over here on the left, we can see what the actual target is for the number of billable hours for the resources in that group, as well as the number of billable hours and the utilization percentage achieved. To the right, we're able to view that in a chart with our benchmark indicated as a 68% utilization. While I don't have a drill down set up for this particular demo, certainly this would be a great place to have one where you could thereby drill into the work groups that are not achieving the benchmark and see if there are certain resources that are bringing down that overall utilization of the group, or is it the group across the board. Again, that is very critical information to making decisions, whether that is getting rid of a group altogether that's maybe attached to some line of business that really isn't profitable, or maybe it's just a couple of one or two culprits within the group that are bringing everybody else down. Finally, another potential view of interest to executives is project margin. Specifically here, we are viewing it by line of business, and that's just one way of looking at it. Certainly with ChangePoint's configurability and flexibility, you could roll this up into various views, like we've seen in some of the other tabs of this dashboard. Again, we've got an option to include or exclude certain fiscal years. By the way, you're not limited to fiscal years in viewing data in ChangePoint. It just so happens that's how we created these particular dashboards for demo purposes. You can look at it by quarter, by month. We do have that capability. So if we look at the top chart, again, we've got our benchmark here for project margin set at 40% in this case. And we can very clearly see that we really only have one line of business implementation that is exceeding that benchmark. The others aren't even reaching it. You know, I could certainly come over here and filter on various years and see, okay, well, what was 2012 versus this year, and see if it's just related to this particular year's performance. Below that, I can also see just some details around each line of business and how much we've invoiced and the breakdown of the cost. So again, getting a little bit more into the types of costs. Are we seeing unbillable costs where we shouldn't be? And if so, you know, perhaps, you know, having a drill down to be able to go in and look at exactly where those are coming from. Which projects? Is it unbillable labor? Is it unbillable travel expenses or something else? So you can then make decisions around how to manage those lines of business and to get your margin back up to where it needs to be. Okay. This concludes the technical part of the demo. In closing, I just want to point out that, you know, I've demonstrated some KPI examples and hopefully the ability that ChangePoint provides in tracking your organization's performance against benchmark data, as well as the ability to drill down into root cause to provide you with the information you need for decision making. And just please keep in mind that what you saw today was purely just a sample of the possibilities, and that you're certainly not limited to what you've seen in our session today. It was just a very small sampling, and hopefully it did drive home the point or give you some ideas as to what you could do with it and where you could take it in your organization. So thank you for your time. And we do have a slide here for staying connected with ChangePoint where you can reach us. So for more information, please look for us there. And at this point, I'm going to hand it back over to Ernie.
Great. Thank you very much, Laura, for that great content. Now we're going to transition into the Q&A portion of the webinar. As a reminder, if you have any questions you would like to have us answered by Laura, please ask them in your questions area in your GoToWebinar control panel. So we'll just start off with our first question, Laura. Does your product come with a predefined set of KPIs for an organization to deploy, or do your customers define those themselves?
Okay, good question. We do offer some predefined KPI reporting and dashboard views as part of our accelerators that I mentioned previously. But certainly, those are meant to be just a starting point, and they can be used as a starting point and tweaked or modified to fit for an organization's specific needs. Additionally, a company can build their own using our BI tools. So certainly, you're not limited to what we put in our accelerators. And we are constantly adding to our accelerators. We are in a big effort right now, adding more and more KPI reports and dashboards to our accelerators so that customers can just take them and run with them.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question. Does your system have an integrated accounting module, or does it link to an organization's existing accounting system?
Okay, that's another good question. We do not have an integrated accounting module, but we do have a number of customers that have integrated to a lot of the standard financial packages out there, you know, Dynamics, many of them. We have a lot of experience with it. We have various integration platforms as well, depending on your needs, whether you need real-time integration or if sort of a batch file transfer integration capability is desired. So while we are not an accounting system per se, we certainly can provide the data to feed over to an accounting system, and we do that quite well.
Okay, great. Our next question is around the dashboard views that you highlighted in the demo. Are those made available to your customers, or do they have to build those on their own?
We do make those available through our accelerators. And so even what we saw in the demo today, for example, those would be available. There are many more you did not see. We have many more in areas like resource management and project management. There's a whole slew of them that we've built, and we do make available if customers want them.
Okay, great. You made, and so this is a kind of question around, you made the point that you really take a lot of control and pride in the implementation process. Can you give us an idea of what that typical implementation time looks like?
A typical time. Okay, well, I'm going to have to respond or caveat my responses, and it depends. It depends on a number of things. So one, it depends on what exactly is being implemented. So again, I mentioned earlier, ChangePoint has a lot of breadth to its functionality. We support a lot of the critical processes in a professional services organization. So we usually recommend that a customer pick where their biggest pain points lie, and we start with those pieces of ChangePoint that will help resolve those first. It also depends on the number of resources that you plan to deploy to, and how big is your organization. Certainly if you're 100 users versus 10,000, your timeline to implement is going to be much longer for a bigger organization. It really just depends. It could be for a small organization and very limited scope, 3 months might be possible. I'd say 6 months is more typical. For a large organization, very large, much larger organization, that timeline will probably be extended out a bit more. So I just would say maybe an average of 6 months.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just want to ask a question around how do you go about setting up a KPI with a specific benchmark target your organization wants to measure against?
Well, it's really it's within that particular report itself that you place on a dashboard. So within that report, you can add, if you're creating a new one versus one that we've provided, it's really just an attribute of that report that you're building in for highlighting what the benchmark is and where that sits in the particular chart or graphic that you're using. It's a very simple display of that. So it is, even if you were to take some of our pre-built KPI reports, but you wanted to utilize a different benchmark target based on your industry and the size of your company, you could certainly do that. That's just something that's configurable within that KPI report.
Okay, great. And in the beginning part of your presentation, you mentioned how you've been very recognized as an industry leader, especially by Gartner. Can you speak to your customer service model and how you service customers on some level?
Our customer service model. Okay, I'm not sure if we're talking about our customer support model. I think maybe is what we're referring to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think that's what the question. Customer support and training.
Okay. Okay. Yes, I would be happy to talk to that. We have a dedicated support team, one in North America and one in Europe, and once we have implemented a customer through our implementation methodology, which is a very tried and true method, we have a formal transition over to our support organization. The implementation project manager is involved in that, as well as the customer gets an assigned support analyst, and the support desk manager is involved as well. And so key information from the implementation is provided during that session, and we do expect customers to provide sort of their first level or line of support to triage issues, and then our support desk works as the second level of support. When we have maintenance agreements, and so when you stay current with your maintenance, you have access to our support desk, and we have service level agreements in terms of response times and all that. And also, as long as you're current in your maintenance, you're entitled to any service packs or major releases, that we have free of charge. So, all that is included in that. And hopefully I addressed your questions around that. But if there are any additional questions following this call, we're certainly happy to answer them for you.
Okay, great. Next question, I don't know if you'll be able to give a real precise answer, but just in general, someone's just trying to get a sense of, how large the project team might be on, say, something that'll take a 6-month implementation, or what is the typical FTPs required to implement? How many from maybe your company, your support company, and how many team members usually involved in the company that's bought your system?
Okay. I will try to answer this partially. I would feel a little bit more comfortable with someone from our services director answering this. We can certainly get that information following this. But what I can say is that from our side, we typically, we always provide a project consultant, and we provide a technical resource, and also a solution architect. Those are really the key individuals, and it depends on really the size and the scope of the project and how quickly the customer wants to be up and running as well. So we typically do not have resources assigned 100% of the time on a project, nor do we send them to the client site 100% of the time. We try to strike a balance between doing work on-site versus off-site. We have had some customers that did want the full-time resources, and we can provide that when needed. But we really work with the customer to sort of define what that will look like based on their time frame. And as far as from the customer side, the number of FTEs, it really depends, again, on the scope of the implementation. So again, that's something we'd be glad to provide some more detail on that question directly from our services group. So I apologize, I just don't want to say something that's not quite right with regard to the FTEs required from the customer side. But we do, I think, have this pretty well documented in some of our implementation documents.
Great. Do you seem to have a typical customer or the range of company size or industry specific where this seems to really have to have gotten some traction more well? Is there a company size, or the specific industries, or does it just kind of go across the board, the value that you're seeing?
Well, we're certainly scalable up to more than 40,000 users. I would say, we tend to have a lot of customers, in the 1,000 to, say 500 to, 3,000 range. We've got customers in many different industries. We have a lot in the financial services space and the technology services space. In fact, I'd say we probably if you had to break it down, the majority would probably be in the technology services space, but certainly we do run the gamut, I would say. And then we do have many with a global nature. We can support multi-currency and multi-language as well. That's something I didn't mention previously. But for our customers who do operate globally, that is a very important capability to have, as well as our ability to scale. So those things have been differentiators for us in this market.
Okay, great. So people are able to scale up the number of users, say, as their company grows through acquisition.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. We've got a number of customers, and some very recent ones too, that were already large implementations that have grown exponentially through acquisitions, and we are definitely able to support that. Whether it's through acquisition or organic growth. We certainly have both happen, and that is one of the benefits of ChangePoint. I know that we have some. There are some other players out there in the PSA space that are not as scalable, and that's where some companies have run into trouble when they did have this big acquisition or suddenly grew and they just weren't able to scale on their existing system. That's an area where we have some specific customer stories that we'd be happy to share at some point with anyone that's interested.
Okay, great. Can you speak to are the dashboards? Are those customizable by the user? Is that something that can get set up on a user level across different areas of the company? Are those all customizable, and how are those dashboards set up?
Well, so you have dashboards, and then you have the reports, or what you call widgets, in the dashboard. So each little chart is a widget. Creating the widgets themselves requires a little bit of knowledge of our BI tool, and so that would be an area where you would potentially have some resources that are experts in that. Also, again, we provide our accelerators with a large number of these widgets pre-built. So while those take a little bit of expertise, the dashboards themselves, any user can create a new dashboard and then take existing widgets that have been built and drag them under their dashboard to create their own dashboards with the information that is important to them for doing what they need to do day to day.
Okay, great. I have a question kind of always comes up when we're talking technology on the security front. So is security something, could you speak how that's administered? Is that at the user level? How does that work?
Yeah, so security, it is by user. We recommend, and I say what is the best practice across our customer base, is creating roles, security roles that you then assign to resources, because it's much easier to grant security and keep track of it that way as well. We have various reports that tell you what features are granted out to various roles and users too. So essentially, there's a checkbox and a long list of features of what people can and can't do in the system, and it's very easy, user-friendly to set those up. This is something else that comes with our accelerators. We have sort of recommended security roles. For example, for a project manager, we have a security role called project manager, and it has recommended levels of access that you can either use or you can tweak it. So it really makes a big difference in getting the security off the ground. It's a very easy thing to implement.
Okay, great. Appreciate your willingness to take a lot of questions. We've had a lot of questions, and I also know that some of the questions will probably be very specific, especially as you've gone through the demo. So people have the opportunity to reach out and contact yourself after the webinar is over, and probably have a private demo as well. The last question I'd like to ask before I close the Q&A session is, can you speak to what my be next in the area of PSA automation? What's the functionality that might be coming down the pipeline for people to look for?
Okay, so that's a very good question. I'm involved right now. As I mentioned earlier, we try to stay abreast of where customers, have issues, what we're seeing in the sales cycles, and so we're actually putting a lot of features and functionality, more than what we have now, into our financial capabilities. So while we currently have pretty robust budgeting capability, as well as invoicing and revenue recognition, we are going to add enhancements in those areas. So we're really taking input from our existing customers on that. And we also, our product management group talks to people like myself who are out there, the feet on the street, the people who are engaging with the prospects and the analysts and the customers to get our feedback as well. So that, I'd say, in terms of our next few releases, as well as advances in our mobility and continued improvements in our BI functionality, this is really what we're focusing on in the, I guess, near future of our roadmap. And one other thing to mention is that we've got a very active user group community that is a really great sounding board for some of these things too. So when we come up with, well, here are our proposed upcoming enhancements in our roadmap, we'll very often go to the user group and bounce it off of them and ask for their feedback. Sometimes it's in the form of a survey that we request a feedback, or it might be something a little less formal, but we do try to engage them as much as possible. And just another word on that is the user group is a global community, and we have a lot of events associated with it. We have regional user group meetings as well as global user group meetings. We will invite certain customers to participate in beta projects, especially around new functionality that we're developing, and and get their feedback on it as we're developing it. So it's been a very successful model for us in terms of ensuring that what we are developing is in line with customer needs.
Okay, great. That is absolutely fantastic. Again, we'd like to thank Laura for her time and insight. She's clearly a leader in her field and an excellent source of information on today's topics. You'll have the ability at one click to ask to be connected with her, as you'll be prompted to take a short survey once this webinar concludes. We greatly appreciate your feedback on the event. We invite you to please join us at www.performative.com to ask any additional questions you may have. Continue the conversation with your peers and the experts you have heard from today. A brief note, we'd like to remind the audience about our Performative Second Annual CFO Dimensions Conference, which will be held in August 21st, 22nd in New York City. It's going to be a great event with world-class speakers focused on strategic leadership and finance. You can learn more about that at www.cfodimensions.com. Again, we would like to thank today's sponsor, CompuWare, whose commitment to thought leadership is critical to all that we do at Performative. And finally, I would like to thank the audience for your valuable time. We hope to see you again at another Performative event or online at www.performative.com. Make the rest of your day great, everyone. Thank you.